Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to season 3 of the Sharing Jesus Confidently podcast, where we talk about all things sharing our faith with others. Today I have with me a special guest, Pastor James Aiton. He and his wife Kate lead a phenomenal church, Favour Church in Manila, and they also have a location in Brisbane. And God is doing amazing things in and through their life and ministry and through their family. So today we're going to talk about all things sharing Jesus confidently, his story, and a number of questions that will help you unpack how easy evangelism is. Great. Awesome. Why don't you welcome with me Pastor James. Pastor James, so great to have you with us.
Sharee, lovely to be here.
Thank you so much, man. We love you. We're so excited to have you here this week, and just for the privilege even of this conversation.
Yeah.
But to kick it off nice and light, tell me, what is your favourite food?
Unhealthy.
Unhealthy?
Yeah, I love burgers and fries. I'm a burger.
awesome.
I drink healthy. I
Yep.
generally just have water so
Okay.
that I can eat more unhealthy.
Right. So the
Yeah.
theory, it's almost like one of those theories, like have diet drink and it
No. I
eliminates?
drink water.
Just
the
straight up
diet
water.
drink is still unhealthy. That's still killing you. But water, I'll drink water so I can have more burgers. That's
Right.
yeah.
There you go.
I'm a burgers
Theory.
and fries guy.
Right there. We'll remember that to take you out to dinner.
Mm.
So another question, favourite football team? I know the answer to this one, but others won't.
I'm a card-carrying member of the Essendon Football Club.
Yep.
So
well, we don't hold that against you.
I love Essendon, but for those, but then I love the Melbourne Storm for rugby because I'm not
Yes.
one-dimensional.
Can't discriminate,
Because
no.
there's different people watching this, but I also love Manchester United as a
Wow.
football club, as
Wow.
well, and the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes.
Those are my 4 football clubs.
Come on,
yeah.
Dallas
So
Cowboys.
whoever's watching this from whatever country, all things to all people, right?
Come on.
But I do love Essendon.
love that.
I'm a big Essendon fan.
Yeah. Okay. Melbourne football. There we have it.
Yep.
All right. Favourite worship song?
Oh, I don't know. You got me on that one. No, I love all worship. I'm a worshiper.
Uh-huh.
I always go back to, I either always go back to Oh Lord, You're Beautiful by Keith Green, or I Exalt Thee. Whenever I
Yeah.
get on the piano, I kind of always end up in those 2 songs and singing them. So,
Take you
yeah,
straight.
but I just love worship
Yeah.
in general.
Come on.
Yeah.
All right. Favourite author or preacher? Old school.
You'd hate me for saying this. I don't love reading.
Okay.
I love the Bible.
Uh-huh.
I'm a terrible reader. They say this thing, leaders are readers. I hate that. I think leaders are learners.
discriminating.
Yeah, it's discriminating against us that struggle. Leaders are learners.
Yeah. 100%.
But maybe, oh man, I don't know. I love, I don't know. I love T.D. Jakes.
Yeah.
Old school when I was younger, I loved a guy called Chris Hill.
Yeah. Yes.
Who was a phenomenal preacher who actually preached a couple messages that really radically shifted my perspective on life. And,
Come on.
But yeah, I love African American preachers.
Okay. All
Big
right.
time.
There you
But,
go.
yeah.
Very good. All right. And I guess today, just to kick it off and start off with,
Yeah.
maybe just tell us a little bit about your story and about how you came to faith in Jesus.
Yeah. So I was born in the Philippines to an Aussie father and a New Zealand mother. And they were missionaries in the Philippines for 13 years. And so I lived there till I was 10. And then I went back. We came to Australia and lived here in Melbourne, where we're filming this, for about 7 years.
Yeah, wow.
And I always grew up knowing Jesus, knowing he was real, seeing miracles, demon-possessed people writhing on the floor, all that kind of stuff, particularly in the Philippines. And so I never, ever questioned the validity of the existence of Jesus.
Yeah.
But when I became a teenager, I'm a pretty simple guy in general. I liked women and I liked alcohol.
Yeah, right.
And I had this sense of, I'll do the Jesus stuff when I'm older, because I know it's real, but I'll do the Jesus stuff when I'm older. And so I was halfway through my grade 12 here at a school called Waverly Christian College.
Oh, hello.
And my parents came to me and said, how would you feel about wanting to go back to the Philippines to do your last year of school at a missionary? That's why I had this accent.
Yeah.
I got an American accent because I went to an American missionary school there. And so I was excited. I didn't really like my parents at the time. And I'm thinking a year away from them, back in the country that I still feel is my home.
Yeah.
And so I went back to the Philippines, went nuts for 3 months, enjoyed it. And then in November of 2001, I was playing basketball, and one of our best friends essentially had a heart attack, dies on the basketball court in front of us, right?
Wow.
And me and all my best friends, about 20 of us. And that night, I remember they rushed him off. He died in front of us, but then they still took him in an ambulance and took him off. So we had to wait in the school for about 2 hours. And they
Wow.
came and told us finally that he had died. I remember we were all crying and, just trying to I'm 17 years old. Like, how do you process this? So I went behind our school gym, which overlooks the entire city of Manila. It's this beautiful place where I've been. My kids go to this school now, which is crazy. So I always love to go sit in this exact same spot. I know the spot. And I'm sitting there and I'm crying, trying to process it. And in my head, I remember just talking to God. Because remember, God's real. I just didn't like the rules. Rules. I just didn't like it. And I'm like, if I had died tonight, where would I have gone? And I remember blurting out physically, hell.
Wow.
And I just started to weep. And it was this moment of, maybe I don't have time in the future, Like the whole fire and brimstone. If you walk out of the church building in the night, get hit by a truck, do you know where you're going, right?
Yeah.
So people are like, no, don't say that. But man, that was me, like in that moment. And so that was November. In January at our school, we had a preacher come. And he shared his testimony, which was basically very similar to mine of just the vices of life, not really caring about Jesus. He was a missionary kid as well. And I remember putting up my hand and going, I need to take this seriously. And my desire was there. I'm a huge believer in the sanctification process. I think any pastor has to be a believer if you love people in the sanctification process of, sometimes people have these radical transformations, but the majority of people, it's a process of becoming more like Jesus every day, which I'm still on. 21 years later, I'm still on this process.
Wow.
And so I put my hand up, and I wasn't perfect straight away, but it started a process that then 6 months later, when I graduated high school, came back to Australia, my parents took over a church. And I decided in that moment, I really had to take things seriously. So I made a few mistakes in that first 6 months. And so I cut out the two main things that were coming before me and Jesus.
Wow.
And I put them aside. And that's when my relationship with God began to grow, and my involvement in church. And my relationship with Jesus and my involvement in church have run a parallel journey for the last 21 years.
Wow.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I love the local church. And I love that how I've grown in Jesus as a person. I've grown as a servant of Jesus as well in his church.
Come on,
So that's my quick story.
Isn't it beautiful, the fear of the Lord when it gets you?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And it's amazing for I think a lot of kids that grow up in church. I've got a real heart for kids that grow up in church because it's almost like we become numb to how great God is because we're surrounded by the goodness. It's like you don't know you're living in blessing until you get removed from the blessing and realize what you had, right? And so I think a lot of times, a lot of Christian kids growing up not having this fear, this reverence fear of the Lord, because we've just grown up around it as it's normal. It's not a, God, Abba Father, right? I think every Christian kid needs to have that God revelation moment of, you are Abba Father, not just, oh yeah, what's up, God?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of Christian kids, we've grown up, for those that have grown up within the church, have grown up with this familiarity with God that's not healthy.
Yeah. Yep.
Because familiarity breeds contempt.
Contempt.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
And so you lose that respect. So I love the Lord's Prayer. I preach on this all the time. Our Father in art in heaven, hallowed be your name. So Jesus starts it off. The foundation of the Lord's Prayer is intimacy.
Yeah.
Our Father. It's this term, Abba, which is this affectionate term that grown adults would use with their father, right? Yeah. So he starts it off with this intimacy. Oh, you are my Father. And then what's the very next line? Hallowed be your name. Your name is holy. Like, you are my Father, but whoa, chill. You're still holy.
Yep.
So it's not like, hey, Dad.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Father, I love intimacy. I sit on Dad's lap and give him a hug.
Yeah.
But just chill. He's still sitting up in heaven, and he's still holy. He's the creator.
Yeah.
And I just love that in the first two lines, we see this beautiful invitation of God to be intimate, but to remember that he is holy, and we should have a fear and reverence of who he is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a real heart in that space for kids who grow up in those environments
Yep.
they don't know the Lord personally.
Yes.
They know of Him, but they don't
I
know
think it's
Him.
I think it's almost harder
Yeah.
because I see people come in and they find Jesus in their late teens or their 20s, because that's obviously the largest amount of the biggest time in people's lives, right?
Yeah.
Teenagers, late 20s, but Jesus can find Jesus anywhere. And it's like you see their aha moment.
Uh-huh.
Aha! It's like I was in darkness, now I'm in light.
Right. Yep.
I think as Christian kids, like we live in the lit room, but
Yep.
maybe with darkness in us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're in the lit room, and so I think it's almost harder sometimes to have the aha moment
Yeah.
as a Christian kid, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
And hey, if I can have it,
Yeah.
anybody can have
That's
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really feel like God's got a heart for that next generation. You know, I was reading through Joshua chapter 3 and 4,
Yep.
crossover, consecrate yourselves, going to do great and mighty
Yeah.
things. They cross over, and Joshua commands them to set up the stones memorial. You know,
Love it. Remember
and
the stones.
Just remember.
Yeah.
And yet, 2 generations later, they grew up not knowing
Totally.
the Lord or His ways.
One of the
His
saddest stories in the whole Bible.
word. Ridiculously
Yeah.
sad.
It's because the parents didn't live it out and they didn't speak of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they had a word of faith, they had a walk of faith, but they
Yeah.
didn't have a witness of faith.
What's interesting is, and I know we're talking about evangelism, and we won't spend time on this today, but you probably need to do another series on how should parents evangelize to their children,
Yep.
particularly in church. And so my wife, we've got basically a 9, a 7, a 5-year-old right now, right? And so we're talking a lot about, they grow up in church, they love church,
Yeah.
which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, yeah.
They love the house of God. There's not a fire in their bellies yet for the Holy Spirit. But we've actually been talking about, I don't want to force feed God to them. I want to leave breadcrumbs for them to find Jesus. I want to be an example. My wife and I are an example. We have worship in our house. We'll pray together.
Yeah.
We read the Bible. But, you know, I feel like some parents just force feed Christianity and God to their... It's like, how should we evangelize to people? Should we force feed it?
Yeah.
Should we be an example? Should we leave breadcrumbs? So for us, we've kind of gone, okay, and we're not perfect, and we don't know if this is going to work, but we kind of want to leave breadcrumbs where it's like, hey, this is what we believe, but you need to work this out yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Even from a young age, you need to see if you believe this.
Yeah.
And we're going to, and I think we'll talk about this later on, but we're going to live a life that looks attractive
Yeah.
to be followers of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I pray that my kids follow the breadcrumbs to Christ. Because if you force feed it, once they become adults, it doesn't matter how, if anything, force feeding, it pushes them
away.
potentially away.
Yep.
But how do you do it? I don't know the answers. Maybe we can do this in 14 years when my when my kids.
When you've excelled at it and I'm starting at it.
people that write parenting books and
Oh,
your kids aren't in their 40s, you're idiots. Like you need to give them
gotta wait till you
time.
got something to say.
You got to
Yeah,
give them time to make sure
100%,
you get it right.
100%.
Anyway.
Well, obviously, speaking about that, you're obviously in ministry. You and Kate doing a phenomenal job there in Manila and Brisbane, and leading people. How do you keep that evangelism? Obviously, in the family, your own kids, that's a part of your journey. But how do you keep evangelism at the forefront of your mind, sharing the gospel with people, in the context of a busy life in ministry?
Yeah. I think it's harder sometimes because your world gets surrounded by Christians.
Yeah.
So I think it's hard. I get to evangelize to people every week when I preach. And the lie is that that's evangelism, I think.
Yep.
It's tough. So you've got to look at your life and go, okay, where am I evangelizing? How am I spending, how am I sharing Christ with people around?
Yeah.
And I think, so for me, the way I look at evangelism is it's not just sharing Christ with somebody, it's everything, right? It's your being a reflection of Christ to somebody. And so I can evangelize to you, even if I don't lead you through the sinner's prayer.
Yeah.
You encountering me can evangelize to you. And, I love Paul. Some people plant the seeds, some people water it, right? And some people see it grow, get the fruits of it. And so I think that everything I do is evangelism in that I may not lead you to Christ. I may not even speak to you explicitly of the doctrine of salvation.
Yeah.
But if you know I'm a Christian and I treat you well, I've just left a good taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
That maybe somebody else along in, in your journey and they can begin to, and you go, oh, I had an encounter with this weird Aussie Filipino American dude, and he said he was a Christian, and I guess as well, we're working against the negative attitudes towards Christianity. Christians are hypocrites, you bigots, all that kind of stuff. And so I think if I can leave a good taste of Christianity in someone's mouth, then it's going to help in their journey of finding Jesus. And so I think for me, it's just looking at opportunities. We have a park where we live. So just, I'm not the guy that's like, hi, I'm James. Do you know Jesus? I'm just not that guy. Some people are. I'm not. But inevitably, because of my position, it always comes up that I'm a pastor. And I actually try and not tell people that. That's sort of the last thing. Because I want them to see, because as soon as you say you're a pastor, then it's almost like you're expected to be good. I want them to experience me as a Christian, not as a pastor. Because I should be good because I'm a Christian. I should be loving and kind because I'm a Christian, not because I'm a pastor. And so I just try and use that in wherever I go to share the love of Christ. And if I can get that opportunity to then, I remember sitting on an airplane, and again, when I get on an airplane, like some people, I hear these preachers like, every airplane ride is an opportunity to lead someone to Christ. I'm like, man, airplane ride for me is put my headphones in and just watch a movie, right? So I remember getting on the airplane maybe a couple years ago, and this Aussie guy from the Philippines coming over to Australia. We're traveling back, and so he starts talking to me, and I'm like, oh okay, here we go. I just wanted to watch a movie. And so we start talking, and he's like, oh, so what do you do? I'm like, oh yeah, I live here, we work. Oh, so what do you do as a work? So I always try and leave it to I'm like, oh, actually I'm a pastor at church. Oh. And then he kind of, shifted. He kind of pulled away a little bit. And then I said, oh, so what are you doing here in the Philippines? He goes, oh, I own some, some bars and stuff here. I went, where are those bars located? Right? It's amazing. And he goes, and he said this place. He goes, Longopo and Angeles City. I went, those type of bars, because the Longopo and Angeles City are the two biggest strip club sex places in the Philippines, right? They're from the old American bases. And he goes, yep, no, those type of bars. But we're really good. And he goes on to explain about how he treats all his hookers and strippers really well, and all this kind of stuff, right? And again, how do I then respond? Like, man, you're a sinner going to hell. I acted interested in the fact that he gets all the hookers tested every week, and I'm like, oh, that's nice of you. And so there's a little bit of tongue in cheek, but we began to talk. Anyway, turns out, grew up in church.
Wow.
Mother is still in church.
Wow.
He feels a little bit guilty about doing this job, but it's earning him money. He's getting about $45,000 a month just by owning these things, and his family's got a huge business in Australia, and this is a side project getting him $45,000 a month. And so we began to talk, and in that moment, I'm like, you don't need any judgment from me. And so I just began to share the love of Jesus. I didn't lead him to Christ in that moment, but as well, and I've got a theory as well about the prodigals. The prodigals know the way home. You can't force a prodigal home. The father never ran after the prodigal. He let him go, because the prodigal then knew when he'd hit rock bottom, he knew how to get back, and his father was waiting there with loving arms. So this guy on the plane, I just tried to share how God had changed my life, and I tried to love him. We exchanged Facebook thing, you know what I mean? And tried to, I wanted to leave a good taste in his mouth of what a Christian was.
Beautiful.
And so that maybe there's somebody else, maybe his mother who's still in church. I encountered this guy, and he was different to what I thought Christians were. You know what I'm saying?
So, salt and light.
Yep, we have to be.
Salt and light, a taste and an exposure to the light.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of Christians leave such a bad taste in people's mouth that we need to, I don't know if you're going to ask us, but let's talk about it. I think one of the greatest things that we need to do, people reduce evangelism to, I got to tell you about Jesus, right? And then you can swing. So there's like the two extremes is people go, I just have to tell everyone, you're going to hell, you need Jesus, right? And then the other swing is Bill Hybels' relational evangelism, right? Take time. Walk across the room. Remember that? Take time, build a relationship, right? And so you end up being friends with someone for 10 years before you even mention Jesus.
Yeah,
So
that's a problem.
yeah, right. So, but I think for me, what you say, so the people that you got to do this, it has to be backed up in your life. And so I think we have to make living a life of following Jesus look attractive.
Yeah.
And not fake.
Come on.
Not a fake thing. How you doing? I'm too blessed to be depressed today, right? It's not that at all. It's a, like for my kids, why would they follow Jesus if my wife and I are always fighting?
Yeah.
If we're always depressed, if there's no joy in the home, if I'm yelling at my kids all the time, if they see what I preach and then see me live something different. That's not living an attractional life of following Jesus. And so I think making Jesus look attractive. Now, we don't have to make Jesus look attractive. He is attractive enough. But we have to actually show people that following Jesus brings joy.
Yeah.
It brings peace. It doesn't bring perfection.
Yeah.
At all. You're still going to go through stuff. You're still going to have storms. You're still going to have your low valleys. You're going to walk through your shadow of death. You're going to go through all that. But when you do it with Jesus, it's as much. So then when you actually get to the point of, hey, you need Jesus, people are going to be like, yeah, he seems to have helped you in your life.
Yeah.
How can you, these people like, you need Jesus, and go, if Jesus.
It looks like that.
If Jesus looks like your marriage.
Yeah.
If Jesus looks like your finances, and I'm not prosperity, but I'm just saying, like, if you're constantly in debt, constantly constantly using your money terribly and not stewarding it well, if you're a terrible parent, if you're just angry, if that's Jesus, I don't want it. Yeah. So you get what I'm saying. So evangelism is not just knowing the doctrine of salvation. It's actually then backing it up with your life. And what did Jesus say? You will be known. Your fruit, how you'll be known as a disciple is if you love people, right? You love one another. And so if you're loving one another, then you cannot love people if your life is a mess.
Yeah.
Right? It's got to come out of the overflow of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Genuine love, not fake.
Yeah.
Not fake love. And so I think evangelism is as much about showing it.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not the I'll take 10 years to show it. No. You need to get it a bit sooner.
Balance.
But you have to back up what you're saying with a life that actually looks like Jesus has changed your life.
With that, I want to encourage you, if you have not done the Sharing Jesus Confidently course, check it out. It'll teach you the 5 simple gospel points, the truths on how to deliver that, and it will set you up for the win in your conversations with your friends, family, and anyone that you find in your sphere of influence. So thank you so much for being a part of today. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Sharing Jesus Confidently podcast.